إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. Just to recap for the benefit of people that were not here 2 nights ago, just quickly, we discussed 4 important things, I think. The first one, we started with a book called The Black Swan, and this is a book written by a man called Nicholas Nassim Taleb. And firstly, the title of the book, Black Swan, he gives an example. He says if he's studying swans, and he believes that there's only white swans, and he writes books and he believes his whole premise on it, and then all is needed is one black swan to break his whole dogma, and then his whole foundation is shaken. And then the author goes on to give an example of a man or brother, a horse owner, who enters his horse, very successful horse, into a horse race, and people bet their life savings on this horse, and when the bell rings and the gates open, the horse doesn't exit, and people lose their fortunes. But the owner of the horse, he makes a fortune, because he has one bit of information that the others don't have, and that is that the horse was sick that night. So he bets against his own horse, and he makes a fortune. And the point the author is making is that critical bits of information, when we act on it, can be the difference between suffering a black swan and not. It means something that shakes your foundation. And then we spoke about the importance of mindfulness and how the experiences that we do mindfully, those are actually the times and the experiences that we own. So for example, if you walk out in the morning and you pick up a flower and smell it, that 1 minute or 2 minutes that you're doing that action consciously, that's the time that you own. And if you're driving to work for 60 minutes or 90 minutes and you're listening to something superfluous on the radio or thinking about what you're going to do at work, that 90 minutes is 90 minutes lost. So we should spend our time in activities that will compound our time. And we said examples of compound time is like reading, exercising, eating healthy, keeping good relationships. And compound time meaning these are activities that will benefit us moving forward. And then we discussed the importance of ihsan and how the brain interprets all forms of beauty the same. Whether you're looking at faces or you're looking at objects or beautiful actions, they all come to the same portions of the brain. And they use the same reward system to make you feel good. So the brain doesn't distinguish between beauty and goodness. And then we looked at how mindfulness and beauty ties in with the immune system. And we said when you mindfully engage in something, especially when it comes to medicine, you have a thing called the placebo effect. When people believe that the medicine is going to work, then science has proven that it does work. And the opposite of that is the nocebo, that when you think something won't work, it won't work. And we gave the example of a man that was participating in a study involving antidepressant medication, And he was taking the placebo. He was actually getting sugar tablets, and he had a fight with his girlfriend, and so he overdosed on the sugar tablets. But his heart rate started accelerating, and his blood pressure started dropping, and he was manifesting all the symptoms of an overdose. And when he got to the hospital, they said to him, "But you were on sugar pills." And then immediately those symptoms subsided. So we said that when you understand the way the body functions and you look at all these things that we've been commanded to do, all the commandments in the Sharia, then we actually start to see that these are actually gifts. These are not burdens that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put upon us, but rather gifts. And so that session was to just describe the way the body works and prepare us to appreciate the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And so we're starting today with 3 gifts: the gift of gratitude, patience, and forgiveness. Now, this is a quote by Aristotle 2,500 years ago. He says, "Happiness is the ultimate end and purpose of human existence." And for the Greeks, when they said happiness, they used the word eudaimonia, which means purposeful living. We translate it as happiness, but they were saying purposeful living is the ultimate end and purpose of human existence. In our terms, would be ihsan. And so you can see down the ages, this is what human beings aspire towards. And then he goes on to say, and again, this is 2,500 years ago, he says, "He is happy who lives in accordance with complete virtue and is sufficiently equipped with external goods." It means health, wealth, knowledge, friends. These are all like balls we're juggling. If you take your eye off one, the other ball is going to fall. You have to give each one its due. And then he says, not for some chance, period, but throughout a complete life. Now, psychologists in America, for example, they've done a study and say if a person earns about $75,000 a year, it means roughly $6,000, that is sufficient for him for his happiness. And then they describe an upper limit, and they say when you exceed this upper limit, for every dollar you exceed that upper limit, you start earning unhappiness. So literally what they're saying is you need a bare minimum of amount of wealth and goods and comfort, and then you need to supplement everything else with good action. If you start adding materialism, you start adding unhappiness. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves, first of all, if we have all this information, why don't we act on it? Remember, like the guy with the horse, there was 2 things: the critical information and then using it. So if we have the critical information, why is it that we're not using it? And so Imam Ghazali says, not everyone is in harmony with himself, and not everyone treats himself as a friend, although you may think so. For man is generally his own enemy. He does not know it, but he proves it in his doings. So, this is a powerful statement by James Allen. He says, circumstances reveal you to yourself. How you behave when you're angry, it's revealing you to yourself. How you behave with people at home, how you behave with your customers, how you behave with your husband or your wife, your children, strangers, all those are indications of who you actually are. You can have a personal persona and a public persona, but you yourself know what your persona is made of. Once we become conscious of the things we're doing, then we can start to address the issues that will actually bring us success and happiness and allow us to enjoy the gifts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, Abraham Lincoln, he says, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Meaning that the key to changing the world is to change ourselves. We all trying to change everyone else. You get together for a family's lunch or a family supper, and everyone's got their theories on how the world should change and how Islam needs to be reformed, but everything lies within us. This is the advanced technology Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has infused into us. Now, there's 3 things that affect us, or rather hinder us from accomplishing our goal. The first is all of us have a devil. We have a shaitan within us. And this shaitan has not been given complete control over us. You can see in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, the believer can seize the forelock of his devil, as one of you seizes the forelock of his camel whilst traveling. That means it's possible to overcome your shaitan, because this shaitan, he only suggests. Alright? Min sharil waswasil khannas. Allah says, from the evil of the whisperer, the one who withdraws. Khannas, he whispers and then he goes away. Then you yourself carry that forward. This is why in the Quran, on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, you're going to say to Allah, Ya Allah, this one is the one that misled me. And then this shaitan is going to reply and say, قَالَ قَرِينُهُ رَبَّنَا مَا أَدْغَيْتُهُ. Then this jinn is going to say, Ya Allah, I didn't misguide him. وَلَكِنْ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ فِي ضَلَالٍ بَعِيدٍ. But he was in distant error. He misguided himself. So the first thing is the shaitan that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has appointed with each of us. But the next important thing is our own nafs. Now this is from a very beautiful book. It's called The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. And what he's basically saying, he's saying that a human being should look at his instinctive and his rational brain, his limbic system, as an elephant. And then he should look at the cortex as the rider. But we know that we're studying the heart, that the rider is actually the heart. But what he says is that this elephant, that human beings are concerned with self-preservation. We fear death, all of us. This is why when you see a message on the WhatsApp, we all threaten because we think death is coming. All right? So we have a natural fear of death. And so we are always looking at life through this lens of fear and anxiety. And so he says, when anyone comes to you, with even words of advice or caution, then you treat that as an attack. And your tool, he says, the tool for combating that in most cases is gossip. You talk bad about the person that tries to assist you with good advice. Now this elephant, this emotional system, loves to operate in what psychologists call System 1. System 1 means it doesn't want to engage the thinking part of your brain. It wants to use as little energy as possible. So the brain has got shortcuts. They call them heuristics. So if I give you an example and I say to you, a bat and a ball costs $1.10. Okay? The bat and the ball cost $1.10. But the bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Any idea? Come on, your elephant is telling you the answer. What's it saying? It's saying 10 cents, isn't it? The ball is 10 cents. Okay? But if you engage your second part, the ball is actually 5 cents and the bat is $1.05 because it's $1 more than the ball. Yes or no? But you see, everyone here used the elephant to answer the question because there was too much energy to move it to the rider. Okay? So these are the way the brain plays tricks with us. Now, the job of the rider is to teach this elephant to be happy, to get him out of that mode of fear and anxiety. Alright? And this elephant, all his faults, they appear unpleasant to him. Because every time you show him a fault, he thinks it's like an attack on his security. Okay? Now the rider, amazingly, the rider who watches the faults of the elephant every day, he's looking at his elephant every day doing all the wrong things. But when somebody comes to tell him and do him a favor and say, hey, you know what, your elephant is doing X, Y, and Z, the rider actually bends up with the elephant and defends his elephant. This is the way the brain functions. Now, when we look at family, many of us, human beings, will look at family, they look at their children as an extension of themselves. So when somebody comes to tell you, you know what, your child's doing X, Y, and Z, you, instead of saying, yes, thank you for bringing me this information, you will join together and then defend your child, for example. Or if you're in your business and a customer comes and complains, you say, oh, these customers are full of nonsense, They don't understand what's happening. But the reality is that in the case of your children, if you do that, you corrupt their elephant and your elephant. And if somebody comes with good criticism in your business and you don't fix it up, eventually you'll have no business. So the rider has to teach the elephant to recognize his own faults and to work to correct them. And the best way to replace bad habits are by good ones. Now, this is an amazing statement that the author makes. I found this profound. He says, the elephant needs to live a meaningful life. Imagine that, and this is the name of our course, right? He says, the elephant needs to live a meaningful life through altruism, through charity, practicing morality according to a set of values in a fixed community. And then the author goes on to say, he says, the problem with the West is we teach morality, but we don't practice it. We need to look to the people from the East because they practice morality and they have a common set of values. And this common set of values need to connect us to a sense of awe. And we're talking of taqwa, mindfulness in our course, which connects us to something greater than ourselves because the body needs that. Now we're just going to look quickly at a short video to just show you the difference of when the elephant is in control, how your body responds, and when the rider is in control, how the body responds.
When we hear the word emotion, most of us think of love, hate, happiness, or fear. Those strong feelings we experience throughout life. Our emotions are the driving force behind many of our behaviors, helpful and unhelpful. Just where do our emotions come from? Our brain is wired to look for threats or rewards. If one is detected, the feeling region of the brain alerts us through the release of chemical messages. Emotions are the effect of these chemical messages traveling from our brain through the body. When our brain detects a potential threat, our brain releases the stress hormones adrenaline and cortisol, which prepare us for a fight or flight response. When we detect or experience something rewarding, such as someone doing something nice for you, our brain releases dopamine, oxytocin, or serotonin. These are the chemicals that make us feel good and motivate us to continue on the task or behavior. In these instances, the feeling region of the brain kicks in before the thinking part. Sometimes the reactions of the feeling brain are so strong that it dominates our behaviors and we're unable to think rationally in the moment. Our emotions hijack our brain. While many of our emotional responses happen subconsciously, our thinking can influence our emotions, and sometimes this can be unhelpful. Just thinking about something threatening can trigger an emotional response. This is where we can manage our emotions with conscious thinking. Our emotions play a powerful role in the way we experience the world. Understanding and regulating our emotions through our thoughts and behaviors can help us take greater control of our brain and achieve our goals.
So you can see the effect of when the elephant is in charge and when your thinking part of the brain is in charge. Now remember we said that one thing that affects our self-regulation and living mindfully is the shaitan that's with us. The second important thing is the environment. Environment plays a key role in motivation and success over motivation, talent, and effort. So this is from an author, psychologist James Clear, motivational theorist. So he gives us some indicators. He says, automate good decisions. Now he gives an example. He says, to buy smaller dinner plates. He says a study done at Cornell University found that switching from 12-inch to 10-inch plates, that means 30 centimeter to 25 centimeter dinner plates, resulted in people eating 22% less. Okay? And then he says, get in the flow. Design an environment where good habits get in the flow of your normal behavior. For example, put a book next to your armchair. Subtract the negative influences, put the TV remote in another room or elsewhere. And take the chocolates and put it in the furthest recess of the house. Now, here's one interesting thing. I just put this thing because it's interesting. I think it will add to our understanding. He gives an example. He says, when you look at the Eurasian continent, Europe and Asia, they produce 2 to 3 times more farming or agricultural crops than Africa and the US. And that's because they farm horizontally, and there isn't a big shift in the seasons and in the climate as you move from east to west. But as you move from north to south, you have big changes. So environment has a big impact on circumstances. Now this is important. He says the lack of the environment. You know, when we're late for work, we blame the traffic. When we lose a game, we blame the referee. When business is bad, we blame the economy. If your husband is late, then you may call him irresponsible. If you're late, you blame the traffic. You give yourself that excuse. He says, but when we win a game, then we played well. And if we're early for an appointment, then we organized. When business is good, then we the skilled business people, then we're taking all the credit. He says, but the environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior, together with motivation and effort. But the important thing I wanted to take from this from us, is that the elephant needs to be assisted, first of all, by looking at the company we keep. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kunu ma'as sadiqeen. Be in the company of the truthful people. And in another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, that a man is on the religion of his friend. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلُ. So let each of you look to who he or she befriends. Because if you have people that are calling you to more materialism, you need to be cautious. If you have people that you don't see or not calling you towards remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need to be alert. If your elephant is taking you into environments where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not clearly visible, you need to rethink the places you visit and the company you keep. The next important thing, in addition to environment, is motivation. Now, you know, normally we say we should motivate ourselves to action. But actually what psychologists find is that action leads to motivation. You need willpower to give you the desire to act, and then action leads to motivation. And so in one study, they took 248 people, they divided them into 3 groups. The first group, they said, we want you for the next 2 weeks to record your exercise habits. How many times you exercise in a day? The second group, they gave them a lecture to tell them the importance of exercise. And then they said, you keep track of your exercise routine. And the third one, they gave them the explanation of the benefit of exercise. And then they said, we want a commitment. You write down on a piece of paper that I will exercise every day at this particular time. And in the first group, that was given no information, 35% of them exercised. In the second group, that they were explained the benefit of exercise, how many do you think exercised? 38%. Knowing that exercise is beneficial for you, that resulted in only 3% more. But in the ones that wrote down, we will exercise on this particular date and time, 91% exercised. So everyone here is very worried about the walking and burning 1 calorie per hour. But if you don't set the time to get up and walk, you won't burn the calories, right? And so one of the things we need to use is that the if not then strategy. So you declare an identity and you say, I'm going to walk every day at 5 o'clock. Or when I come from work, or I come from the mosque, or whatever it is, I've finished with supper, I'll take the walk. And if not, if for some reason somebody visited or something happened, then I'm going to walk at such and such time. Now you are disciplining your elephant. Because life is a sum total of our habits. By and large, our health is a result of the habits that we develop for ourselves. Our happiness is a result of our habits. So depending on whether we discipline this elephant or not, is going to determine, in most cases, our health and happiness. In the cases where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts the test, then we have another strategy that we need to employ. So changing life is not about some big goal, but it's about changing the small habits that affect the final outcome. Next important thing, never substitute morality for compensation. This is one of the ways we like to motivate our children. Now, they found that students that were collecting money for cancer patients, they were doing so well. So they said, you know what, we think we should pay them some money because they're doing so well. As soon as they gave them the money, the collections fell by more than 50%. And you know why it was? Because the people they were collecting from detected now the insincerity in them. The frequency changed. See? They found oncologists. Now remember, oncologists are people that work with cancer patients. They're working with the most vulnerable of people in society. But they found that when medical companies incentivize them, they even overprescribe chemotherapy, which is the worst possible thing for human beings. And then they found that a particular school in the US, they decided they're going to penalize parents for picking up their children late. And as soon as they put in the penalty that you had to pay $5 every time your child was late, the incidence of picking up children late increased by 300%. So they were shocked. They said, how is this people paying? And now it increased. What they found is that in the first case, the parents were so concerned about the teachers that were waiting, and they were making sure they do their utmost to pick up the children. But once they monetized it, they said $5, they were not thinking about the welfare of the teachers anymore. It was okay, $5 is not such a big thing. So putting money into the picture changed the behavior of people. So be careful of incentivizing your children. Now the British, when they took over India, they incentivized the people from Delhi. For every snake skin they brought, they got money. And what do you think the Indian did? He started farming cobra snakes. Okay? And it created a whole excess of snakes in India, and they had to scrap the whole system. So rather teach the children a value system. And this is where ihsan ties in with motivation. When we teach ourselves and we teach people the importance and the beauty of ihsan, that becomes our value system and that becomes our motivation. Now, the 3 R's of habit change. This is very important, right? Every habit you have, good or bad, follows these 3 steps. There's a reminder. So, for example, if you want to floss, the reminder could be brushing your teeth. Every time I brush my teeth, then I'm going to floss. So the reminder is brushing the teeth, the routine is flossing, and the reward is you get good teeth. Same thing, so you do the same thing with exercise. I'm going to exercise every day after so-and-so thing. So you look for triggers in your day, okay, that will trigger some routine, and then you enjoy the benefit. Now what I found amazing is that when you look at the sunnah, this is exactly the way it works. You get out of bed, that's the trigger. The routine, return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You enter the bathroom, that's the routine. Turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wudu is the routine, turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Getting in the car, the trigger, the routine, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every single action, the Prophet ﷺ has used as a trigger to teach us to move back to mindfulness. And we've seen how powerful mindfulness is in our lives. So use this as a tool for mindfulness, but also use it for the other goals you have in life, whether it's to do exercise or to learn something. This is a very powerful tool that we can use. Because the grass is greener where you wet it, right? If we work on ourselves, then we become people of value. If we continue without becoming conscious of our negative side, then that's what's going to overtake us. Now, our famous author, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, has got another amazing book. It's called Fooled by Randomness, and I thought we'll just discuss a few things from the book. The first one is attribution bias, and that's what we spoke about, that when we do something bad, we have an excuse. But when somebody else does it, we don't afford them that same luxury of the excuse. We look for a shortcoming in them. So if I break something, it was an accident. If somebody else breaks it, they're clumsy. Or they have a don't care attitude. That's attribution bias. Okay? Path dependency, and this is directly related to gratitude. So for example, if a man has $5 million, 5 million rand, and he loses 4, so he's now got 1. He is in depression. He needs to go for counseling, right? But the same man, if he had no money and he wins $1 million, he's the happiest man. Now, how come the result is the same, but the response is different? In one case, he's in absolute depression, and in the other one, he's ecstatic. But if we look at the result, if we focus on the result rather than the path, then this helps us with gratitude. If we're living in this country and every day you open the tap and the water comes out, make shukr. Rather than following all those WhatsApps that's telling you that everything's falling apart. Oh, see what Jacques Pbuh said. The country's falling to pieces. But the lights are switching on, the food is there, the cars are moving, Forget about the path dependency. Look at what you have and make shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next important thing he wants us to understand is that we are creatures of emotion. Emotion is the first thing that gets activated, and so the elephant is the first thing in the picture. And then the rider has to calm him down. So he says Buddha's donkey is an analogy in psychology. They say that if we were like machines, and you had a donkey that was excessively thirsty and excessively hungry, it would actually die of thirst. So this donkey, if we were mechanical, it would die in the middle there because it's not sure whether it should go for the water or go for the food. But Allah has put instinct inside of us, so it will go for one of the two. This is why we find we like certain things and we dislike certain things. Okay, so what we have to recognize, Mohammed, can you hear? Is that we are driven by emotion, so we have to become aware of the emotion. And then the last point he makes, he says, avoid useless news and predictions. And this is absolutely essential for us living in this country. And he gives an example. He says, if a stockbroker looks at his terminal every hour, okay, over a 20-year period, then for 60,600 hours, he'll be happy because stock moves up. But for 60,200 hours, he'll be unhappy. That means almost half the time he'll be happy, half of the time he'll be unhappy. But if he looks at his figures only once a year, 19 of the 20 years he'll be happy. So we, for example, in business, today is quiet, then you're in depression. But at the end of the month when you look, it almost always averages out. And in this month is quiet, but when you look at the end of the year, it almost averages out. So just looking at things differently can change your state of mind. Okay? And so this is why news is so dangerous today, because news is business. And the people that are feeding us the news, they feed into this very elephant psychology of ours. Now the next important thing, this is a book, it's called The Happiness Project. Now this lady was a lawyer and she gave up practicing law and moved into the countryside to enjoy life, or to find happiness rather. And the first important thing she says that the days are long, but the years are short. And so she said, every day I started taking notes of the things I'm grateful for. And all of a sudden, my whole experience of life started changing. And here's few points she gives us. She says, work on yourself. It's usually our wrongdoing that makes us unhappy and leads to nagging, gossiping, and amassing what we don't need. She says, don't change your partner, change yourself. Change your life without changing your life. Now, you know what that means? She said she looked at all the negative things in her life. One of the things she hated most was doing homework with her children. So what she decided, to change that to a fun-filled activity. She decided that when it came to homework time, she would set aside some playing time and change the way they did homework so that the children enjoyed it. It became like an adventure for them. And very soon, it became the best time of the day in her house. Homework time, and it comes back to the environment. She says, happiness rubs off on others, especially your family. And what she started finding, by her doing all these changes, the whole house started changing. So whereas initially she felt that everyone else was doing wrong and harming her, when she made this change, everything else started changing around her. So she says, try to focus on the larger purpose of whatever you're doing. When you're stuck in a traffic jam, taking your daughter to school, remember that it's because you love her and wanted to get a good education. Thinking about that, it changes this negative situation. So they call, we always talk about fright or flight, okay? But they say that if you turn that experience into something positive, it can become something they call excite and delight. So where cortisol constricts your vascular system, what this one does is it expands your arteries and actually gives you more flow. So when you're stuck in a stressful situation, just change the way you look at it, and it will actually change the functioning on the way your body works. Now, you may think that the things we're talking of, may sound too simplistic. But a recent study showed that 6 emotions, happiness, surprise, anger, fear, sadness, and disgust, they could differentiate it by just checking the frequency on your skin. It's literally in your entire frequency, they can tell the different emotions you're on. But this was an amazing study. They took men that are HIV positive, okay? And they put them into this study, giving them 8 simple things to do for 15 months. Let's look at the things they asked them to do. All right? Well, this was the test. Learn skills for positive emotions result in less HIV in blood and less antidepressant use. So the first thing they taught them is to recognize a positive event each day. Just one. One positive event each day. Could be that your eyes are working, that your ears are working, that your hands are working, okay, that your digestion, your stomach is working, your legs are carrying you, you have a roof over your head, you have children, you have secure income. There's millions of things you can think of. The next thing they said to them, savor that positive event. So recognize the event and then savor it by logging it in a journal or telling someone about it. Next, start a daily gratitude journal, where you just make notes of things that you're grateful for. They said list the personal strength each day and then write down how you use that strength. So maybe I'm somebody that likes to read, so I'm going to read a story for my child or my grandchild. Set an attainable goal each day, noting your progress. I want to read 4 chapters today, and then you just write down how you fared with that task. Report a relatively minor stress each day, and then list a way in which you could have positively intervened. Understanding small acts of kindness can have a big impact on positive emotion, and then practicing one small act of kindness each day. And practicing mindfulness with a daily 10-minute breathing exercise, concentrating on your breath. Now, obviously, we have Salah and we have so many more powerful things, but at the end of 15 months, they found that the viral load in some of these patients was so low that it was not even, or it was low enough for them not to transmit the disease. And almost all of them could have been taken off antidepressants. And they could lower their doses of medication by just doing these simple tasks. Now, here's one of the most important things you can leave tonight with. We are hardwired for anticipation, not experience. I'm going to explain that to you. Now, why anticipation? It's a survival instinct. We have to anticipate food, otherwise we won't eat, you die of hunger. For example, okay? Now, they did an experiment involving monkeys. So what they did was, they put a light in a small chamber, and every time the light came on, they gave the monkey a few drops of sweet juice. Now, the first time the monkey tasted the juice, his dopamine levels in his brain spiked. Okay? Then what they did thereafter, they flashed the light and then they gave him the juice. But what they found is, every time the light flashed, the dopamine increased. But every time he tasted it, less dopamine was produced. That means he was getting more enjoyment from the anticipation than from the experience. Okay, so this is an example of a sugary donut. The first time you bite into it, the sugar spikes your dopamine level. But thereafter you eat it, you never get that same pleasure. And it's like a promise being broken. This is part of the drug addiction. The drug addict is chasing that first high, the anticipation. Now this dopamine system is closely linked to your opioid system. The opioid system is the hormones in your body that make you feel good. So what they found is just seeing a Coke. You see a can of Coke, activated levels of dopamine. And then they put a few different brands of Coke on the table and they imaged people's brains and they could see which ones they preferred, just from the brain activity. Okay? So seeing the logo was like turning on the light for the monkey. Alright? So people that like Coke, the light flashes. People that see Pepsi, the light flashes. So the greater the expectation, the more rewarding it feels. Now this is because what we spoke of the other day, the centralized reward system of the brain, because the brain sees goodness and it sees taste and it sees smell and it sees beautiful faces, all in the same reward system. This is why when they want to sell you a car, they show you a beautiful woman. They'll show you a hamburger, they show you a beautiful woman. Isn't it? They show you all these things where people look very happy and they know your brain recognizes it. Then they say, buy the car, buy the burger, buy the shoe, buy the watch. They show you the actor, then they show you the watch. And then you think you'll be happy as the actor if you have the watch. Okay? So we start to enjoy the brand and not just the product. Now this is the important thing. If we can understand that the elephant is chasing just that illusion of happiness, then you can start to take control of your life back from the corporations and the media. Now, the most powerful thing to deactivate the anticipation system is gratitude. Because what gratitude does is it neutralizes the anticipation. Because you say, I'm happy with what I have. I don't need that. So the anticipation is switched off. And if you train your brain, then eventually you will get the benefit from the experience instead of the anticipation. Now, this is the Roman Caesar Cicero. He says, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others. Rumi says, gratitude is the wine for the soul. Go on, get drunk. Now, the first thing, when we look at gratitude, or shukr, it's got two dimensions, okay? The shukr to Allah and then shukr to human beings. But in line with our topic first of avoiding black swans, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Inna arsalna alayhim hasiba. As we said the other night, Allah says, we sent against them a tornado, illa ala Lut, except the people of Lut, najjaynahum bisahab. We saved him in the last hours of the night. Ni'matan min indina. A favor from us. كَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي مَنْ شَكَرَ. Thus do we reward those who thank us. Maybe if we want security in this country, we should start making shukr. We've become so tied up in this negative spiral. We're forgetting to even make shukr. The famous story of Musa alayhi salam. Musa was walking. And a man said to him, Musa, when you meet Allah, tell him to stop sending for me, I got enough. Musa said, okay. He carried on, met another man. The man said, Musa, when you meet Allah, tell him to please send me something, I got nothing. Musa said, okay. Musa alayhi salam passed by that path sometime later. He met the first man. He said, did you put my petition to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Musa said, yes. Allah said, just stop making shukr, he'll stop sending to you. The man said, how can I stop making shukr? So Musa said, so be happy with what you have. And then Musa alayhi salam met the second man. And the man said to Musa alayhi salam, did you put my petition to Allah? Musa alayhi salam said, yes. Allah said, just start making shukr. He'll send for you. He said, what should I make shukr for? I don't have anything. You see? So we have all this and we don't make the shukr. We end up into a downward spiral. Now look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He says, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ. When your Lord announced, adhin is like the muadhin, the adhan. The adhan is for something important to calling people to. So Allah is giving us something important. What's He saying? لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ. If you are grateful, لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. You see that mushaddad on the noon? It means most certainly. It's the noon of emphasis. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ. But if you're thankless, إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. Then my punishment is severe. Now if you understand the way the body works, when you don't make shukr, you are already starting to afflict yourself with illness. Now, gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is based on 5 foundations according to Ibn al-Qayyim. First, it's humility of the thankful one towards the one who is thanked. And this is very important because when we become religious, we become arrogant. We think we're doing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a favor. And then we're starting to become the assessors, the revenue service for everyone else. We want to check everyone's balance sheets. But you have to make shukr that Allah guided you, and the sign is you become humble. And then you start to develop a love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You acknowledge His blessings. You praise Him for those blessings. And then you never use the blessing for anything that He hates. That means your money, your health, every gift Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, you don't use it in His disobedience. So the signs we should see in people is that the gratitude should appear in the heart. It should be acknowledged on the tongue, and then it should be demonstrated in actions. Now we go to gratitude to people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يشكر الله من لا يشكر الناس. You cannot make shukr to Allah if you can't make shukr to people. And we can see from this that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is encouraging us just to be grateful because of the benefits. Now let's look at the difference between appreciation and gratitude. Appreciation is recognizing the goodness or value in people or things. You going around to identify goodness. And gratitude is thanking the one responsible for the goodness that you appreciated. So there's a subtle difference between the two. But when we experience heartfelt emotions like appreciation, love, care, and compassion, then your frequency starts to change. Remember we said about those students that were collecting the money? They collected half. Why? Because the frequency changed. And the people they were collecting the money from could detect it. So appreciation is like a powerful tool, sending all these powerful nutrients, endocannabinoids and endorphins and serotonin and dopamine to every cell in your body. The more it's used, the easier it becomes to keep the body in a positive and happy state. Now, gratitude is a state of the heart. Look at what this psychologist, I liked his definition. He says, it has been conceptualized as an emotion, a virtue, a moral sentiment, a motive, a coping response, a skill, and an attitude. It is all of these and more. So, you need to start giving yourself the gift of gratitude. Start by giving yourself the gift of thank you. They can measure a difference in your brain when you say thanks and when you say thank you. There's a far more powerful response in your brain when you say thank you over saying thanks. And nothing when you say nothing. So, why will you not say thank you to every single person you come into contact with? Because when you say thank you to him, you're gifting yourself. Why would we deprive ourselves? And we find that most of the time, we dispense with this gift when it comes to the people that are closest to us. You will not say thank you to your wife, or to your husband, or children to their parents or parents to the children. Why? It's a gift for you, it's a gift for them. So the physical benefits of gratitude, you end up with a stronger immune system and lower blood pressure. We saw the effects of positivity day before yesterday. You get less bothered by aches and pains because you are producing the endorphins that make you feel good, and they like the body's natural painkillers. It results in better relationships with partners and happier marriages. There's a direct link between gratitude and the health of a marriage. People that are gratitude, they exercise more and take better care of their health. They sleep longer and feel more refreshed upon waking. In a 2011 study, they found that people that just sit in bed, and before you sit in bed, just think about a few things you're grateful for. You have a far better and a far stronger nutritionally benefit sleep. The body enters into a more powerful state of homeostasis, of self-repair. They found higher levels of positive emotions. In this study, they took people, they broke them into 3 groups. The first one had to write down each day something they were grateful for. The second group had to write something that irritated them, and the third one, just some neutral information. And after 10 weeks, they found the people that were writing the one item of gratitude each day were far happier than the others. Now, if you're sending one WhatsApp each day of all the bad things happening in the country, what's happening to you 10 weeks' time? They found athletes who expressed gratitude to their coaches had a far higher level of self-esteem and even performance. And this even 6 months later after the experiment. They found more joy and pleasure. They did a study with 411 participants, and they got them over a period of time to write small stories. But they found when they told them to write a story, thanking someone who did something for them in the past that they didn't thank properly, that had such an effect on them. It kept their spirits up for over a month. They found that teaching teenagers to just count blessings, each day you articulate one blessing, it resulted in more optimism and happiness in those adolescents. People that are grateful, they're more helpful, more generous, and more compassionate. Now remember, all these things we've studied, they make you feel better. So when they make you feel better, you become more grateful. When you're more grateful, you go into a compound cycle of goodness. They found in a 2012 study that people that were more forgiving are less likely to seek revenge and displayed more empathy for other people. And grateful people were less likely to compare and resent others. So just tying back into your dopamine system. And rather than develop an appreciation, they rather developed an appreciation and admiration for others. And they found people that are grateful, they feel less lonely and less depressed. They found that war veterans that came from Vietnam, those that were grateful, didn't suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So look at this beautiful verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ. Indeed, we gave Luqman wisdom. And look at what is one of the wisdoms. Anishkur lillahi, you make shukr to Allah. Now look at the part. وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ. Whoever is grateful, فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. He's grateful for his own benefit. You see the power of this verse? وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. If you thankless, Allah doesn't need you. He's independent and He's praiseworthy. Now look, there's a beautiful hadith of Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ, Mu'adh says, Mu'adh radiallahu anhu says, أَخَذَ بِيَدِي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم فَقَالَ. The Prophet ﷺ, he took my hand and he said, إِنِّي لَأُحِبُّكَ يَا مُعَاذ. Indeed, I love you, O Mu'adh. Imagine what feeling the Prophet ﷺ had for Mu'adh. فَقُلْتُ. So Mu'adh, he says, so I said, وَأَنَا أُحِبُّكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And Ya Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I love you also. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فلا تدع أن تقول في كل صلاة ربي أعني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. He said, never neglect to say in your prayer, meaning before the salah, ربي أعني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. I met a man once, many of us know him, Sheikh Ahmad Khatri from Kenya. He was an imam in Makkah for about 20 years. And he said to me that the Sahaba, when their children used to pray, they used to ask them when they were finished, did you make this dua before salam? If they said no, they said pray again. So important it was that they wanted them to say it, because they understood the value of shukr. But look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. But only few of my servants are thankful. Now let's look at gratitude and patience. In this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ. Amazing the case of a believer. إِنَّ أَمْرَهُ كُلَّهُ خَيْرٌ. Every affair is good for him. وَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ لِأَحَدٍ إِلَّا لِلْمُؤْمِنِ. And that's not for anyone except for a believer. إِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ سَرَاءُ شَكَرًا. If goodness comes to him, he makes shukr. فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ. And that's a source of good for him. وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ ضَرَاءُ. And if difficulty comes upon him, صَبَرًا فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ. And that's a source of good for him. Now, again, like gratitude, patience has also got two dimensions. Patience with towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and patience to the people around us. Now, this is a beautiful verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا. Say, O my slaves who have iman, ittaqu, be mindful of Allah. See mindfulness. Ittaqu rabbakum lilladhina ahsanu fi hadhihi dunya hasana. Now after the mindfulness comes the ihsan. For those who behave with ihsan, you get ihsan in this world. وَأَرْضُ اللَّهَ وَاسِعَةٌ. And the earth of Allah is wide. إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. And Allah will reward the patient people without any measure. So see what's in this verse. We got taqwa, we got ihsan, and we got sabr, patience. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says again, Luqman, Ya bunayya aqimis salah. O my son, observe salah, wa'mur bil ma'ruf, enjoin what is good, wanha anil munkar, forbid what is evil, wasbir ala ma asabaka. And be patient with what afflicts you. Now listen to the end of this verse. Inna dhalika min azmi al-umur. In that is from the most important commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Patience. Okay, remember this verse. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is amazing because this verse here, in this verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مُوسَى بِآيَاتِنَا. And we sent our signs with Musa, أَنْ أَخْرِجْ قَوْمَكَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. Remove people from the darkness to the light. Just remember the quantum. From the darkness to the light. وَذَكِّرُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. Remind them of the days of Allah, meaning the days when Allah assisted these people when they didn't think the help of Allah is going to come. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ. Indeed, in that are signs لِكُلِّ صَبَّارٍ شَكُورٍ. For people who are patient and grateful. When was this? In times when they thought the help of Allah is not going to come. What saved them? Sabr and shukr. We're living in a country where we think, na'udhu billah, that's even not possible for Allah to fix up what's happening here. But maybe there's something that we need to be fixing up in ourselves. But this verse, where Allah talks about this, appears 4 times in the Quran. 4 times in Surah Ibrahim, Surah Luqman, Surah Saba, and Surah Shura. So patience is the key to joy, as Rumi says. And patience is bitter, but it's filthy sweet, as Aristotle says. Now, the Heart Math Institute, they call patience the art of intelligent waiting. I thought that's a beautiful way of putting it. Now, patience has many different forms. The one is patience in interpersonal relationships. Patience with your wife, patience with your children, patience with your staff, patience with people you come into contact with. And in this case, patience is like a gift. When you overlook, it's like a gift you're giving to the person. And it helps to strengthen the relationships. The second type of patience is patience from the tribulations of life. And the patience, like we said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, we're definitely going to test you. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. We're going to test you with loss of life and wealth and goods and fear, and give glad tidings to the patient. And the third type of patience is patience over daily hassles, like in traffic, in long queues. If you convert that patience, it becomes a compound time event, because now it brings positive effects into your body. And all these three types, okay, were found, all these three types of patience were found in people that were more generous, more forgiving, and more compassionate. These people found it easier to be patient. So patience is a tool that keeps your vibrational state high. It shields you from harmful emotions like anger, complacency, frustration, and blaming others. It's a shield from physical and psychological illness because less depression and cortisol. And patient people are more mindful and grateful, and vice versa. Now, if you really want to understand the power of patience, you need to look at impatience. Because impatience is the thief of opportunity and positive experience. It robs you of your time. It robs you of your compound time. It can cost a friend, a partner, a pass mark if you're studying. It can cost a fight. It can cost a fortune if you're not patient in business, for example. It robs us of the compound time and opportunities with a loved one, with a neighbor, or even enjoying nature. You know, I was saying to Hussein that the day before I was rushing home from the shop because of my lecture, and I wasn't done yet. And my grandson stopped. He said, "Dada, please put on my shoes." You know, and I said to him, "No, tell your father to put it on." But then I thought, no, man, this is a compound time. And so I put my bag down and I stopped. And I bent down to put on his shoes, and he caught my neck with his hand, you know, and I put his shoes on wrong, and he laughed, and I changed it. But the whole experience was so beautiful that I can still feel his touch on my neck and me feeling his foot. So this is something that I gained. This is the compound time, and this is what you can gain when you resist impatience. You know, learn to breathe. I forgot to complete it. There's a book called 4 Breaths. And basically what this man is saying, before you do anything, take 4 breaths and then make the decision, any answer. So patience is power. It gives you control over the situation. And impatience is losing control over your elephant. It's like your elephant running crazy, you know, trampling everything in its path. So Ibn Qayyim says, patience means that there's no difference in behavior between times of prosperity and that of adversity, and to be grateful at all times. So I want you to just look at the understanding of the peoples that came before us. And then he says people have 2 forces, driving and restraining. You know, like accelerator and brakes. Will anyone get into a car that doesn't have either of the 2? Will you get into a car that doesn't have an accelerator or doesn't have brakes? You'll never get into it. Because without the accelerator, you can't move. And without the brakes, definitely you're going to crash. And this is what patience is, right? The driving, so he says 2 forces, the driving force that push him forward to what benefits him, and the restraining force that holds him back from what harms him. This is what patience is. When you employ patience, you're not doing anyone a favor. You're actually keeping yourself back from something that will harm you. And then he says, complaint should be made to Allah only, and not to man. Complaining to man is contrary to patience. Let's remember that. And for people that have lost loved ones, look at this beautiful hadith. The Prophet ﷺ says, "Ma li abdi mu'mini indi jaza'an." I don't have any reward for a believing slave of mine, إِذَا قَبَضْتُ صَفِيَّهُ مِنْ أَهْلِ الدُّنْيَا. When I take away someone he loves from this dunya, ثُمَّ احْتَسَبَهُ, and he bears it patiently, إِلَّا الْجَنَّةِ. Except I'll give you Jannah. You withhold the sadness, be patient, it's like an exchange. You give Allah this, Allah will give you Jannah. And the Prophet ﷺ says, وَمَا أُعْتِيَ أَحَدٌ عَطَاءً خَيْرًا وَأَوْسَعَ مِنَ الصَّبْرِ. There's no gift that is better and more comprehensive than patience. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ says, الصَّبْرُ عِنْدَ الصَّدْمَةِ الْأُولَى. Patience is at the first stroke of the calamity. When you hear something breaking, that's when you need the patience. When you hear something banging, that's when you need the patience. Because if you allow yourself to get excited, you harm your body. Now you balance later on and decide to be patient, you've already caused harm to yourself. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now he says, وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ. So for the one that's patient, وَغَفَرَ, and he forgives, إِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. You remember the first verse we said? It was a similar ending. And in this one, Allah just puts the lam. I remember? We did this in one of the previous lessons, that lam, Imam Sha'arawi says, showing that in this case, forgiving someone is greater than being patient with them. Okay? So, this is a short video I got here. It's got a bit of music. I couldn't edit it out. But it's a beautiful video to show patience and forgiveness. That's just a change we can bring about in the world with beautiful behavior. And now we come to the last part, which is forgiveness, which I think is the most important part. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and again forgiveness has got two parts, vertical and horizontal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَأَنْتَ فِيهِمْ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not destroy you while the Prophet ﷺ is, or while you are amongst them, meaning the Prophet ﷺ. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ مُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَهُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. And Allah will not destroy them while they seek forgiveness. So forgiveness is protection against black swans. And if we've done anything wrong, look at the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Say to my servants who have transgressed themselves, لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Never despair from the mercy of Allah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives all sins. إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. He is the most forgiving, most merciful. And this we did also. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِلَّا مَنْ تَابَ وَآمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا. Except those who repent and believe and do good deeds. فَأُولَٰئِكَ يُبَدِّلُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ حَسَنَاتٍ. For those, Allah will convert their bad actions into good actions. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. And Allah is most forgiving, most merciful. And the Prophet ﷺ says, إِنِّي لَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْهِ فِي الْيَوْمِ 100 مرة. I turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a day more than 100 times.
But what do you do when the person who hurt you doesn't even acknowledge that they've done anything wrong, or gives an obviously insincere apology making no reparations whatsoever? These are the cases of forgiveness that are the most challenging. In my practice, I find this in such examples as adult survivors of child abuse, business people who've been cheated by their partners, or friends or relatives who have betrayed one another. Still, even here there is a solution. I call it release, the third type of forgiveness. Release does not exonerate the offender, nor does it require forbearance. It doesn't even demand that you continue the relationship. But it does ask that instead of continuing to define your life in terms of the hurt done, you release your bad feelings and your preoccupation with the negative things that happened to you. Release does something that is critically important. It allows you to let go of the burden, the silent tax that is weighing you down and eating away at your chance for happiness. If you do not release the pain and anger and move past dwelling on old hurts and betrayals, you will be allowing the ones who hurt you to live rent-free in your mind, reliving forever the persecution that the original incident started. Whether you get there through your own efforts, through psychotherapy, through religion, or some other method, release liberates you from the tyranny of living in the traumatic past, even when the other forms of forgiveness, exoneration and forbearance, are not possible. Exoneration, forbearance, release. To forgive may be divine, but when we understand its dimensions, we find that it is within our ability to do it. I'm Dr. Stephen Marmer of UCLA Medical School for Prager University.
Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, He says, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ. Show forgiveness. وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ. Enjoin what is good. وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. And turn away from the foolish people. Now, forgiveness is like an emotional bath. It protects one from the release of all harmful neurochemicals. So all these bad hormones, like cortisol and epinephrine, it saves you from that. But forgiveness only works if it's sincere. And forgiveness is a favor for the one doing it, not for the one receiving it. So forgive and seek forgiveness. It's good for your heart because it lowers blood pressure. Unforgiveness leads to heart disease. Forgiveness gets you out of the angry mode and enters you into a state of positivity. It aids in overall good health, sleep, and even the effects of your medication. And this mainly by getting you out of the negative mode. Now the thing about forgiveness is activated in the limbic system, the elephant. So when you want to reflect on the fairness of an action, for example, before you forgive someone, you want to say, let me see if I should or should not forgive them. This is not the right thing to do because forgiveness is not happening in the cortex. It's happening in the limbic system. You should rather focus on empathy, because if you want to focus on fairness, you're never going to forgive anyone. Forgiveness protects against long-term stress. So what they did an experiment where they take people and they say, just think about someone that harmed you. And they're testing their blood pressure and their cortisol levels and their facial muscle tension and their sweat gland activity, and everything is activated. And then they say, okay, now focus on forgiving that person. And then all those vital signs all start returning to normal. It compromises your immune system by disrupting the production of bacteria-fighting hormones. It makes it easier to forgive yourself if you've been forgiven, because when you did something to someone, you're keeping that inside of you also in your conscience. When the other person forgives you, it's actually easy for you to let go of that. Now, people who showed high motivation for revenge and avoidance had lower relationship satisfaction. That means people that, when you get angry, you stop talking. They say you have picture and no sound. Like in the old days of the TV, you get picture and no sound. So at home, if you get picture and no sound, that's a sign for lower relationship satisfaction. People who tend to forgive reported greater relationship equality, and also greater commitment to relationships, especially in marriages. They found marriages with this gratitude, there's far more relationship satisfaction. So, don't confuse forgiveness with weakness. There's a story of a boy, Chris Carey, who was 10 years old, in America, walking outside of his house, was abducted by a man, taken into the bushes, stabbed repeatedly with an ice pick. And then the guy took a gun and shot him in his temple, and the bullet exited his eye. This youngster, a few hours later, woke up with a headache, couldn't see through the one eye, got out of the bushes back to the road, was picked up, and he survived. Years later, the police officer that investigated the case said to him, you know, the prime suspect, the man that we believe did this to you, but we just didn't have sufficient evidence to prosecute him, is laying on his deathbed. Why don't you go and confront him? Meaning go and get some satisfaction. What Chris Carrier did was, he went and he comforted the man and he looked after him till he died. And it wasn't that he condoned his action or he forgot. It was that he needed some release. He had to release that from within himself because it was harming him. The next important thing is that sincere apologies help people forgive and calm down. You know, getting fair restitution on top of an apology magnified the effect. But an insincere or incomplete apology actually made people more upset. Why? Because they can read your frequency. People who could not forgive easily had more cortisol and were more likely to be in poor relationships. So they took these people, and the ones that said they were happily married and the others said they're unhappy, they tested their saliva. And the ones that were said in happier marriages, they had lower cortisol levels, and the others had higher cortisol levels. And the thing about cortisol, it helps to metabolize your fat quicker. So you can convert it to energy quicker for emergencies. But when it's not used, it deposits it somewhere where it can get hold of it very quickly. And where do you think that is? In the midsection. You see? So the traffic cops that they have the midsection, that's Nando's, that's not cortisol, right? So unforgiveness, now the opposite of forgiveness is unforgiveness. It's also a state of mind. Unforgiveness results in scorekeeping. Trying to get even and winning the argument. So remember, circumstances reveal you to yourself. When you see you wanting to win the argument and keep score, okay, and trying to get even, rather than compromise, know there's something wrong. Forgiveness results in higher quality in all relationships, especially marriage. People are more willing to forgive if they sense a commitment to compromise. Always have this strategy that you will compromise, and even if you are wrong, it'll be a compound time practice for you. So look at this, and this for the employers, male and female. Sahabi asked the Prophet ﷺ, says, Ya Rasulullah, Kam a'fu anil khatimi. How many times should I forgive my servant? فَقَالْ كُلَّ يَوْمٍ. He said, each day, 70 مرة, 70 times. Forgive them 70 times each day. Why? Because it's good for you. So there we at the end. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded, He said, خُذِ الْعَفُ. Show forgiveness. وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ. And command to what is good. وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. And turn away from the ignorant people. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Jibreel, ma hada? Oh Jibreel, what is this? Listen to the answer. The Prophet ﷺ says, Allah commands you to forgive those who wronged you. Give to those who deprived you, and keep relations with those who cut ties with you. This is the meaning of the verse. And we end with this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ says, Irhamu turhamu. Show mercy and you'll be shown mercy. Waghfiru yaghfiru. Forgive and you will be forgiven. Oh, yaghfir Allahu lakum. Forgive and Allah will forgive you. Now listen. Waylul lil aqma'il qawl. Woe to those vessels that catch the words, meaning these ears. وَيْلٌ لِلْمُسِرِّينَ الَّذِينَ يُسِرُّونَ عَلَى مَا فَعَلُوا وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ. Woe to those who persist, meaning in doing wrong. Alright? Who persist in doing wrong, while they know it. So really, it's up to us to make a change, and the change needs to start within us. وما علينا إلا البلاغ. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم نشهد ولا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.